Good morning, Santa Clarita. Delgado here with you, and a special guest, co-news director Jade Aubuchon, in here with me. Good morning, Jade.
Morning. How are you doing today?
Not too bad. Hopefully, he's going to stay in the AC today.
That is all we can hope for. We also have another special guest today. Joining us over the phones is Senator Suzette Valladares. How are you doing today, Suzette?
Good morning, Jade, from beautiful Sacramento, but as beautiful as our wonderful Santa Clarita.
There, it's been a bit warm down here.
Yeah, it's warm up here, but I complain all the time about the humidity because they're surrounded by rivers out here. But we're from the high desert, so it is humid up here and hot. I'd rather be home.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think we've all heard that argument. Warm and dry is never as bad as warm and wet, or sorry, humid.
You can say it. You can say it. Warm and wet is yuck.
Speaking of yuck, well, you had some issues with what was happening up in Sacramento this week. We've got the budget happening this week. I know that there was some issue with a couple of the bills that have been going through for these so-called affordability packages. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on up there?
Absolutely. Yes, it has been a busy couple of weeks here in Sacramento. Last was what we call House of Origin, and that means any bills that originated in whichever house. So for me, the Senate need to be Senate in order to move forward through the legislative process, and that deadline was on Friday. And Jade, you know it. Everyone knows it's too darn expensive to live in California. And even the Democrats know that. They've incorporated that into their talking points, haven't really incorporated it into their bill package. It was rather embarrassing, I think, for the Democrats last week because, again, House of Origin, they needed to pass their affordability package, which had a whopping, guess, a whopping three bills, bills in their affordability package. Just for some comparison, the week before we had passed their fighting package, which very much needed, but that had 15 bills in it. So 3 bills, 15 bills. This is the kicker, Jade. Not one of their bills really addressed anything in affordability. Doesn't put any money back into the pockets of Californians. Not more money for groceries, for gas, none of it. And as a matter of fact, two of the bills could potentially raise the cost of housing and raise the cost of electricity. So it was super frustrating last week and probably even more frustrating because, on my side of the aisle, Problem Solvers Caucus, which I'm looking forward to seeing some of our bills come over from the Assembly side to the Senate side that were originated, our Problem Solvers bills the Assembly, but they're coming to the Senate. Republicans had nearly 24, I think nearly 20 bills that addressed affordability, including my bills. I've talked about them with you previously. No tax on tips. If we really want to impact the people who need money the most during these hard times, it's our service workers. So whether you are serving people, you're a bartender, we talked about days, whether you are working in as a valet or you're working in a hotel, those tips that you get. And it, for me, was a no-brainer to say no more tax on tips. The other bill that could have really a game changer for California drivers and for our district, we know how many people commute from our district on a daily and how much we're paying for gas is just insane. There is a bill, SB2, that would have rolled back the policy and regulations that CARB, the California Air Resource Board, passed just last November, like two nights after the election. They passed these new rules that are going to increase the price of gas. Well, SB2 rolled back those rules and saved our drivers almost 60 cents a gallon. And man, I'm just telling you, this summer, we're going to be paying so much for gas. The price of gas is going to go up again on July 1st. And we could have done something serious legislatively to impact. But nope, the Democrats cut all of those bills. None of those bills move forward. So there is a real affordability plan in Sacramento, and it's rather frustrating. A really sad time, I think, for Californians who want our legislature, want California government to focus on our affordability crisis.
So when obviously all these bills are being put forward in an attempt to try to help the people who are actually living here, when these bills are being rejected, what is the reasoning that you're hearing from your other fellow representatives?
It's a variety of things. I think for the majority, they refuse to tackle the gas tax, and I think there's a little bit of a transparency and accountability issue comes to how those tax dollars are spent. And it's my theory that they want to continue funding pet projects, and they don't want to go away. They would rather control more of our dollars in the legislature than let us control those dollars. That's one of the reasons I see it's not really talked about out loud from the majority party, but we see it, right? Like every district is impacted by gas prices. Ours is hit harder because we have so many commuters. That's one reason, and the other reason is they talk about and this year they're talking about our budget deficit, that we can't afford to cut taxes because they need those dollars to fund all of the programs, are way over budget. They need that money to balance the budget. And, I don't believe we have a here in California. I believe we have a priorities problem. And I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, we went a $100 billion surplus to now having a $45 billion deficit. And this year it's a nearly $12 billion deficit. But we've tapped out our rainy day fund. We've had meaningful reform or meaningful look at our books to say, hey, why are we spending so much here? Can we cut this? We have a priorities problem in California.
Yeah, it's a very startling change between, as you even said, we went from this historic surplus, what was that, just last year, the year before, and now we're back in this deficit again. How does that happen? I mean, how?
Yeah, they went, for lack of a better term, when we had that surplus, they went buck wild on all of these, one-time projects. They weren't prioritizing the things that were going to save not only California government monies down the line, taxpayer dollars down the line. For instance, one of the things during the 2022 budget year I was fighting for with the surplus dollars on our unemployment debt. We owe the federal government $25 billion. And back in 2022, I said, why don't we use surplus dollars to pay down our unemployment debt that we owe to the federal government? Because I knew then the government, he admitted it, or rather his administration admitted it, that if we didn't pay it down, it was going to increase payroll taxes for small workers. And that is exactly what we've seen. So again, all of these things were avoidable. California just needing to get a grip in terms of our regulation. We make it so expensive to do business here. In turn, it makes us Californians makes it more expensive for us to buy everything.
So, given the changes that are happening in this next week with the budget, what are you see before you kind of break for summer?
Yeah, well, I mean, two really quick updates for you here. I'll talk about the first one. It's kind of, exciting, but I think it's good for our Santa recruiter to know the change in leadership that went up here in Sacramento, and then really brief update you on what the budget's going to look like. Yesterday, there was a huge shakeup in the Senate. The leader of the Senate, the pro tem, and for the last 2.5 years, it's been a gentleman from the northern coastal part of California, Squire. Yesterday he was officially replaced, or the Senate voted pro tem. It's Senator Monique Limon from Santa Barbara area. So it's the first time we've had, a senator as close to our district. It's adjacent to my Senate district, representing leadership in the state Senate, which is phenomenal. And I'm excited that, she's a working mom. While we are on different ideological spectrums, she's a working mom, understands the affordability crisis. So I'm in her leadership, we'll see a real focus on the majority side to address affordability. And then on the budget side, a budget deal was announced. So the real people that craft the budget in California is not actually the legislature for what we want, but the deals are being cut between the pro tem, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the governor. And they came to a deal yesterday. We're still digging. The one thing I can tell you I know for sure that I don't like is there's $100 million being cut in services for our special needs community, our kids that need speech therapy, programs and resources given to young adults with IDD that help them be independent is being cut. There's some serious cuts that are coming, and I am not going to have it. I'm going to be kicking and screaming that we need to restore those cuts. And we have until Sunday to pass the budget, June 15th. And constitutionally, if we don't pass that budget, the legislators don't get paid. And I'm fine with that. We need a balance. We need to do it now, but we need to get our priorities straight.
Well, I wish you luck and hope that you don't lose your mind too much.
I'm trying not to, but it's an honor to represent our community and fight for the important things that we know are going to help our community in all California.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Suzette. This has been Senator Suzette Valladares representing the Santa Clarita Valley and beyond. Thank you so much for joining us from Sacramento.
Have a good day.
And you as well.
This is good Santa Clarita. This is HTSF 90.1 and AM 1220.